Hello, welcome back. I'm Lori Williams, and today I want to talk to you about emotional jumping. So, I learned very early on in my journey that doing affirmations just would not work for me. I was like, say the affirmation, and then there's like my brain was just calling bullshit on myself. Like I knew I was lying to myself, and then people would be like, "Oh, well, just fake it till you make it." But that always just kind of felt like ick to me, and it was like, as far as who I am and like my integrity. I couldn't just lie to myself. So I stopped doing affirmations, and it wasn't until a few years later that I understood why affirmations didn't work for me, and why affirmations don't always work. So I'm printed off this little chart thing. I know it's kind of tiny. Um, so basically what it is it's an emotional funnel. That's actually what I googled. If you want to Google emotional funnel, you'll find this exact same picture that pops up. And essentially what it is it's everything is energy around us. So obviously like our thoughts, our emotions, our physical, well, like our physical body, everything around us is energy. So this is basically saying what vibrational level each of these different either like states of being or emotions are. So at the top we have enlightenment, then peace, joy, love, reason, acceptance, willingness, neutrality, courage, pride, anger, desire, fear, grief, apathy, guilt, and shame. So basically, essentially, like anything on top of the neutrality is considered like a high vibe emotion, where anything below that is getting into more like the low vibe things. Um, okay, so anyway, basically, what's happens with emotional jumping? What I call emotional jumping is like, say, trying to go from fear to peace. Having being like super in fear, and then obviously all of a sudden just trying to find inner peace. What happens is to go from a lower state, a vibrational state, and going into a higher vibrational state, our body doesn't, even our mind does not allow us to do that typically. So what happens is because we can't emotionally jump that much of a distance, we end up failing at it. And then we think that there's something wrong with us and that, well, why can't I do this? And there's nothing wrong with you. It's just the approach isn't working for you. And honestly, it's not going to work for anyone. When I first started my journey, my healing journey, it was to heal myself of suicidal depression. So when I'm like, in that state of being so depressed, how do I go from joy, like from that to joy? Like, no, it wasn't even possible. So I actually, when I teach people, is I encourage them to look at your emotions as rungs on a ladder rather than a funnel. So basically, let's say for an example, if you are at fear, you can figure something like what feels better to you than being in a fear state. So going from fear to courage, jumping from fear to courage. I know like on here, fear and courage are like what, four apart? Yeah, four emotions apart. But honestly, it's not really that much of a jump. If you're trying to go from fear to courage, to just finding the courage, or fear to hope, if you can go from a fear based way of thinking and being into having hope that there is something better, that there is safety out there for you, even if you haven't obtained it yet, that's a huge jump. But it's probably going to be easier for you to make that kind of a huge jump rather than to go from fear all the way up to finding peace. So it's not about going from like a low vibe emotion into a high vibe emotion. It's about working your way up that ladder to that next feeling that feels better for you. So if you can get from saying fear to neutrality, that again, I mean, that's a great jump. That's like a big jump to be able to make, but it's still, and then once you get to neutrality and that becomes your new normal, you can again, okay, what feels better than being neutral? Optimistic might be your next thing, right? And I mean, obviously, like there's the different There's the different emotions on this chart, and I'm not necessarily going by them because that's very limited. I think that is what it's like, maybe 10 or 11 different emotions. Just allow yourself to feel the next best thing. If you wake up today and you're like super depressed and all you can do for the entire day is to be hopeful that tomorrow's a new day and that maybe it'll be better, that's good. Like, that's huge. But to sit there and tell yourself that while you're sitting there and you're completely depressed, that I am happy and I expect happiness wherever I go, your brain's going to call bullshit on you, right? So when you're trying to take yourself from a low vibe emotion into something that's higher, do not emotion jump. This is my opinion. I mean, you can try it and see if it works for you, but don't be surprised if it doesn't. If it doesn't, don't blame yourself. Honestly, like I said, I mean, I couldn't even, my brain would call bullshit on me every single time I tried. Just try to, like, you got to figure out where you are, meet yourself where you are, and then figure out the next thing that feels better for you or better to you. It might just be, you know, I'm going to, if I'm feeling grief right now, and I can find moments that make me smile, that's the next best thing, you know? Like, it might not even be something that's consistent at this point, even if, you know, if you were in a state of grief and now you're finding, like, you know, a few small reasons throughout your day to smile, let that be okay. Let that be good enough, you know? And then eventually, it's going to take a while. It could take, you know, a week or 2 weeks or maybe even a month. You know, everyone who goes through grief, for an example, has to go through it on their own time. But if those moments, every single day of those moments of finding reasons to smile become more and more and more, eventually the grief starts to hurt less and less and less. So it's not about going from a low vibe emotion into a high vibe emotion. Even if you were, like, what's the first one on top of neutrality here? Willingness. So even to go from willingness to enlightenment, like, no, there's a lot of work in those steps. And that's the whole point, is why I feel like emotion jumping doesn't work, because you're missing the point. You're missing the growth that comes with allowing yourself to feel where you are, allowing yourself to navigate meeting yourself where you are, because there's so much vulnerability for yourself in meeting yourself where you are. And there's healing in that as well, of being able to meet yourself where you are, accept where you are, and just, you know, love the hell out of yourself as you're going through whatever it is that you're going through. The whole point isn't to get from where you are up into enlightenment. I mean, it is eventually, but just for today, it's all about the little steps. It's about going to that next rung of the ladder. And then when that becomes your new normal, you go to the next one. And when that becomes your new normal, you go to the next one. And eventually, it's going to take some time, but you're going to realize that the journey was the point. It was never about getting yourself into necessarily a higher state of being. It was the journey of getting you into that way of being that mattered. I hope this helps you. I hope this helps you to realize why, you know, sometimes affirmations don't work for people. One thing I actually do want to say on the affirmations is that if you are trying to use affirmations to help you to, like, have a better mindset, don't go into, oh, I'm so happy and things are always working out for me, if you're in a state of like deep depression. You want to just say something like, you know what, I'm hopeful that I'm growing through this, or I acknowledge that I am evolving as I'm going through this. You know, whatever it is, just something that feels better. Don't focus on where you are. Focus on that one step outside of where you are. And make up your own affirmations. That honestly was the best thing for me, was to realize why affirmations weren't working for me. And then I made up my own that did work for me. And even to this day, I don't really use them that much. Like, I don't use them as much as I used to, like when I first started making my own. But I'm still telling myself all the time, you know, like, things are working out for me. Everything always works out exactly as it's supposed to, you know. But I'm in that place where I can accept that as my truth. If you're not in that place where you can't accept that as your truth, figure it out for you. figure out what your truth is. And like I said, you got to meet yourself where you are. All right, that is it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you back here next time. Until then, take care. Bye for now.